I'd been planning to hold my tongue a few more days, until his fist connected with my cheekbone on the church steps. "You dare expose me here?" Carl snarled. He didn't see who stood behind him. "We're here for the truth," a calm voice cut through. "And for those you've defrauded." I looked up, saw badges gleaming, cameras rolling red, and the man who'd just struck me had no idea. His final stand began at the very place he thought himself safest. "My name is Lila Hart, and I've spent the last 6 years ensuring every dollar of charitable giving at Halberd Dynamics goes exactly where it's promised. It's not glamorous work, matching funds, compliance reports, audit trails, but I sleep well knowing our donations actually build playgrounds and stock food banks. Or I used to, until I found my stepfather's fingerprints all over our books. It started with a routing number that looked familiar. Benton and Sons Construction. Invoice number 4847, matched against our St. Albans Roof Fund contribution. Then another, and another. 27 invoices in 6 months, all flowing from our corporate charity account through the church's Community Improvement Fund, and somehow landing in Carl's business accounts. "You're sure about this?" Tessa leaned over my shoulder, her coffee growing cold as we stared at the spreadsheet. "This touches the church, Lila." "That's exactly why nobody questions the invoices." I highlighted another row. "Look, steel beams, $47,000. The roof project only needed $23,000 worth according to the original bid. But the church signed off on all of these. The church board's facilities vice chair signed off. I didn't need to say who that was. Carl Benton had held that position for 8 years, right alongside his construction business that mysteriously won every church contract. The numbers painted a clear picture: inflated materials costs, phantom deliveries, maintenance work that existed only on paper, classic procurement fraud, dressed up in Sunday clothes. That evening, I sat through another family dinner, watching Carl hold court at the head of the table. My mother, Denise, served his favorite pot roast while he regaled us with plans for the bell tower renovation. "Noah's going to lead the welding crew," Carl announced, clapping my half-brother on the shoulder. Noah beamed, still grateful for the apprenticeship Carl had given him straight out of high school. "Teaching him the family business, right way." "The family business," I echoed, cutting my meat with unnecessary precision. Carl's eyes narrowed. "Something you want to say, Lila?" "Just that business must be good, all those church projects." Denise's hand stilled on her water glass. That small gesture, the way she froze whenever tension crept into the room, told me everything about the last 15 years of her marriage. "The Lord provides for those who serve," Carl said, his voice carrying that particular tone that made Noah straighten in his chair. "Maybe if you spent less time buried in corporate bureaucracy and more time in fellowship, you'd understand that." I smiled, the kind of smile I'd perfected in compliance meetings. "Of course, my mistake. Later." While Denise loaded the dishwasher and Carl dozed in front of the game, I sat in my childhood bedroom and opened my laptop. The risk assessment spreadsheet stared back at me. Document everything, build an airtight case, follow proper channels. But first, I needed more proof. Carl might be a bully, but he wasn't stupid. Those invoices had backup documentation, delivery slips, inspection reports, purchase orders. All of it would be in the church's files or his office. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Saw you at the facilities meeting last week. The lumber never arrived. Tom K. Tom Kowalski, the church's volunteer inventory manager, a retired accountant who'd been questioning discrepancies for months. I'd given him my card, just in case." I typed back, "Can we talk, confidentially?" "Tomorrow, 7 a.m., church basement. Come alone." I deleted the thread and closed my laptop. Through the thin walls, I could hear Carl's snoring mixing with the commentary from the football game. My mother's footsteps padded upstairs, pausing briefly outside my door before continuing to their bedroom. The matching funds program I managed had contributed $380,000 to St. Albans over 2 years. If even half of Carl's invoices were fraudulent, We were looking at a six-figure theft from a church, from a community that trusted him. But more than that, it was theft from every legitimate cause that money could have supported. Every after-school program, every soup kitchen, every shelter that had applied for our funds and been told the budget was already allocated. I pulled out a fresh notebook and began writing. Names, dates, amounts, a parallel record, handwritten, that no one could delete or alter. My stepfather had taught me one thing of value: always protect yourself. He just never expected I'd need protection from him. Sunday dinner had become a minefield. Carl sat at the head of the table, sketching bell tower modifications on a napkin while Denise passed the green beans. Noah studied the drawings with genuine interest, unaware of the numbers I'd been tracking all week. "The copper alone will run us 40 grand, Carl said, tapping his pencil against the paper. "But the congregation deserves the best. That's what the fund is for." 40,000, I kept my voice neutral. "That seems high for copper sheeting." Carl's hand stilled. "What would you know about construction costs?" "I know market rates. Part of my job." "Your job?" He leaned back, the chair creaking under his bulk. "Pushing papers for that pharmaceutical company. Tell me, Lila, when's the last time you actually built something? Created something real?" Noah shifted uncomfortably. Denise reached for the water pitcher, her movements too quick, too eager to fill the silence. "I create accountability," I said. "I make sure money goes where it's promised." "Accountability?" Carl laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "That's rich, coming from someone who hasn't set foot in service for 3 months." "Carl," Denise murmured. "No, Denise, it needs saying." He pointed his fork at me. "This family has a reputation in the congregation. When one member starts drifting, people notice. They talk." "Let them talk." The words slipped out before I could stop them. The room went cold. Noah's fork clinked against his plate. Denise's hands folded in her lap, knuckles white. Carl's voice dropped to that dangerous register I remembered from my teenage years. "Careful, little girl. That corporate badge doesn't mean much when the whole congregation turns their backs on you. When Pastor William starts asking why the Hart family can't stay unified. When the ladies' auxiliary starts whispering about what kind of daughter abandons her family's faith." "I haven't abandoned anything." "Haven't you?" He stood slowly, deliberately. "Nosing around the church office, asking Tom Kowalski questions about inventory. You think I don't know? You think people don't tell me when someone's stirring up trouble?" My pulse hammered, but I kept my face still. If asking about inventory is trouble, maybe that's the problem. "The problem," Carl moved behind Denise's chair, placing heavy hands on her shoulders, "is family members who forget their place, who forget that blood should come before bureaucracy." Denise flinched slightly at his touch but said nothing. Noah stared at his plate. "My place," I said slowly, "is making sure our company's donations are used properly." "Your place is keeping your mouth shut about family business." His fingers tightened on Denise's shoulders. She didn't make a sound, but I saw the small tremor in her hands. "Benton and Sons has served this community for 20 years. We've built half the churches in 3 counties. You want to destroy that legacy over some paperwork?" "I want the truth." "The truth?" Carl released Denise and moved toward me. Not threatening, not exactly, just positioning himself between me and the door. An old tactic. "The truth is you're playing with fire, little girl. The truth is you have no idea how many people depend on our work. Noah's future, your mother's standing in the community, all of it balanced on your need to be righteous." "Carl, please," Denise finally spoke. "She's just doing her job." "Her job ends at the Halberd parking lot." He never looked away from me. "It doesn't extend to my business. It doesn't extend to the church. And it sure as hell doesn't extend to this family." I stood, gathering my purse with steady hands. "Thank you for dinner, Mom." "Sit down," Carl commanded. "We're not finished." "Yes, we are." I met his glare. "I have documentation to review." Something flickered in his eyes, the first hint of uncertainty. "What documentation?" Delivery confirmations, purchase orders, the kind of paperwork that shows where $40,000 of copper actually goes. The silence stretched tight. Noah looked between us, confused. Denise stood abruptly, began clearing plates that were still full. "You're making a mistake," Carl said quietly. "You don't threaten me in my own house." "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm doing my job." "Your job?" He smiled then, cold and knowing. "Let me tell you about jobs. Lila, they're fragile things, especially when companies start hearing about employees who cause problems, who can't work well with others, who make accusations without proof." The threat hung in the air like incense. I thought of my 6 years at Halberd, my spotless record, the programs I'd built. Then I thought of the 27 fraudulent invoices in my laptop. "Good night, Mom." I kissed Denise's cheek, tasting tears she hadn't let fall. "Noah." I walked to the door, Carl's presence heavy behind me. At the threshold, he spoke once more. "Family first. Lila, remember that, or you'll find yourself very alone." The door closed behind me with a soft click. In my car. I sat for a moment, hands trembling on the wheel. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the secure folder where I'd been backing up every document, every email, every shred of evidence. Family first. He had no idea how much his version of family was about to cost him. The district attorney's office occupied the 7th floor of a building that smelled like old coffee and justice deferred. I sat across from Ada Maya Ruiz. My evidence spread between us like a roadmap to fraud. "You've done good work here," Maya said, flipping through the printouts. "But I need to be clear about something. This is your stepfather?" "Yes." "And you understand that once we open an investigation, there's no going back? No family dinners where we pretend this didn't happen?" "I understand." She studied me over her reading glasses. I've seen a lot of whistleblowers get cold feet when they realize what comes next. Lost relationships, retaliation, community backlash. "I've already counted the cost." "Have you?" She pulled out a legal pad. "Because what I see here goes beyond simple fraud. This is conspiracy, money laundering, potentially RICO if we can prove pattern behavior across multiple churches. Your stepfather could face serious time." "Good." The word hung between us. Maya nodded slowly. "All right then. Let's talk about how we do this clean. First rule, no more snooping on your own. You're a witness now, not an investigator. Any evidence you gather improperly could tank the whole case." "What about the church files?" "We'll handle those with proper warrants. Your access as a donor representative is limited. We can use what you've already found, but don't download anything from their systems. Don't take photos of documents you shouldn't have access to, and definitely don't try to record any conversations." I thought of the voice recorder app on my phone. What if he threatens me? Document everything. Save texts, emails, voicemails. If you feel physically unsafe, call 911. She passed me a business card. "Detective Jordan Hale, Financial Crimes Division. He'll be your primary contact." Detective Hale turned out to be a soft-spoken man with accountant's eyes and a detective's instincts. We met in a conference room that afternoon, where he walked me through their investigation protocol. "We're going to propose a sting," he said, straightening his tie. "Perfectly legal. Your company announces a new round of funding for St. Albans. Something substantial, maybe for this bell tower project. We make it conditional on proper documentation and independent verification. Carl will push back. We're counting on it. Desperate people make mistakes." He opened a folder. "These are the shell companies we've identified so far. B&S Supply, Brayfield Construction Services, Covenant Builders, LLC, all registered to variations of Carl Benton or family members." "Including my mother?" "Her name appears on Covenant Builders." My stomach twisted. She doesn't know. "We believe that her signature pattern suggests someone else has been signing for her." He slid a paper across. "Does this look like her handwriting?" It didn't. Too angular, too confident. Carl had been forging her signature. "Here's what we need," Detective Hale continued. Halberd announces the new grant, maybe $200,000 for the bell tower restoration, big enough to be tempting, but will require itemized invoices, photo documentation of deliveries, and sign-offs from multiple board members. He controls the board. Not all of it. We've identified 3 members who've been raising concerns privately. Pastor Williams is also starting to ask questions. Seems the sanctuary renovation from last year is already showing problems. What kind of problems? The kind that happen when you use half the materials you invoice for. I thought of the congregation. Elderly parishioners dropping dollars into collection plates, believing their offerings were building something lasting. How long will this take? Depends on how greedy he gets. Could be weeks, could be months. You'll need to maintain appearances, family dinners, normal routine. Can you do that? I've been pretending everything's fine for years. A few more months won't kill me. Maya leaned forward. There's one more thing. We'll need to put certain safeguards in place. The grant announcement will bring scrutiny. Carl might try to eliminate evidence, intimidate witnesses. Or intimidate me. Especially you. We can offer protection if needed. No, I thought of my mother, still trapped in that house. That would tip him off. I'll be careful. They exchanged glances. At least let us put some surveillance in place, Detective Hale said. The church is public property. We can position cameras around the grounds, parking lot. If anything happens in those areas, we'll have footage. Fine, but nothing at the house. My mother doesn't know about any of this. Understood. Maya closed her folder. One last thing. We'll need you to avoid Tom Kowalski for now. We'll approach him separately. Make sure his statement isn't tainted by further contact with you. He's the one who reached out to me, which is perfect for our case. But from now on, radio silence. Let us work the angles. I signed papers, sworn statements, evidence logs. By the time I left, the sun was setting over Brayfield, painting the courthouse steps gold. My phone buzzed. Text from Denise. Carl asking where you are. Said you have family meeting tomorrow night about bell tower fundraising. Of course he was. I typed back. Tell him I'll be there. Detective Hale had given me a direct number, told me to call day or night if anything felt wrong. Maya had explained the difference between evidence and entrapment. They'd both warned me about the dangerous period between investigation and arrest, when desperate people do desperate things. But sitting in my car, watching normal people living their normal lives, I felt oddly calm. Carl had spent years building his kingdom on a foundation of lies and intimidation. He thought family loyalty would keep me silent, that community pressure would make me fold. He was about to learn what happened when you mistook compliance for weakness. My phone rang. Carl's number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. We need to talk about your attitude. Little girl, tomorrow night, don't make me come looking for you. I saved the message and forwarded it to Detective Hale. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for Carl to walk into it. The facilities committee meeting was held in the church basement, fluorescent lights humming over folding tables arranged in a square. Carl presided from the head. Contractors' hands spread over blueprints and budget sheets. I sat with my halberd folder, representing our corporate interests. The bell tower restoration is critical, Carl announced, his voice filling the room. That copper's been up there since 1952. Another winter and we'll have leaks straight into the sanctuary. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the 8 committee members. I recognized most faces. Local business owners, retirees, people who'd known Carl for decades. Benton & Sons can start immediately, Carl continued. Emergency procurement, given the timeline. No need for competing bids when we're talking about preserving God's house. Actually, I opened my folder. Halberd's contribution comes with procurement requirements. We'll need at least 3 competitive bids. The room went quiet. Carl's jaw tightened. Lila, surely family businesses can be trusted. It's not about trust. It's about fiduciary responsibility. I pulled out the grant guidelines. Any project over $50,000 requires competitive bidding. Company policy. Margaret Hensley, the oldest member, adjusted her glasses. That seems reasonable. Carl, transparency is godly. Transparency. Carl's smile could have frozen holy water. Of course, though I wonder if Ms. Hart here disclosed her family connection when Halberd started funding our projects. Full disclosure was made from day one. I kept my voice steady. It's all documented. Speaking of documentation, Richard Ames, the former bank manager, cleared his throat. I've been trying to reconcile last year's sanctuary renovation receipts. Some of the delivery confirmations seem to be missing. Carl's hands stilled on the blueprints. Tom Kowalski handles inventory. Take it up with him. I tried. Tom says the materials in the receipts never arrived. Tom's getting old, confused. Carl's tone carried a warning. Maybe it's time for someone younger to handle inventory. Tom's mind is sharp as ever, Margaret interjected. If he says materials didn't arrive— They arrived. Carl stood, using his height to dominate the room. I supervise those deliveries personally. Are you calling me a liar? Margaret? The elderly woman shrank back. Others looked away. This was Carl's power. Not physical violence, but the threat of social exile. The weight of his influence. No one's calling anyone a liar. Pastor Williams spoke from the doorway. None of us had heard him enter. But Richard raises a fair point. We have a responsibility to our congregation. Pastor, Carl's demeanor shifted, suddenly deferential. Of course, I'll pull all the documentation myself. Have it ready by Sunday. Wonderful. The pastor's mild tone didn't match his sharp eyes. And Lila, thank you for clarifying Halberd's requirements. We'll absolutely follow proper bidding procedures. Carl's knuckles went white against the table. If that's what everyone wants. It's what integrity demands, Pastor Williams said simply. After the meeting, I lingered, packing my folder slowly while others filed out. Carl waited until we were alone. You think you're clever. His voice was low, controlled, hiding behind corporate policies. I'm doing my job. Your job? He stepped closer, blocking the door. Let me explain how jobs work, little girl. They depend on reputation, on people trusting you. What happens when the whole congregation knows you're the one holding up critical repairs? When the roof leaks during Easter service because you insisted on bureaucracy? Then they'll know I followed the law. The law, he laughed, harsh and short. You have no idea what you're playing with. 20 years I've kept this church standing. 20 years of relationships, favors, understanding. You think your little paperwork matters against that? Yes. Something shifted in his expression. For the first time, I saw uncertainty crack through his armor. I've been patient with you, he said, out of respect for your mother, but patience has limits. So does fraud. The word hung between us like a blade. His face darkened. Careful. Accusations like that can destroy families. Ask yourself, is your crusade worth your mother's happiness? Noah's future? Because I promise you, if this goes south, you won't be the only one hurt. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you that actions have consequences, that family should come first. He stepped aside, gesturing to the door. Think about that before the next meeting. Think about who you want standing with you when this is over. I walked past him, spine straight, heart hammering. In the parking lot, I spotted the van Detective Hale had described. HVAC company logo, tinted windows. The cameras were rolling. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Inventory sheets from 2019 to 2023. Check your car. I found the manila envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. Inside, photocopies of receiving documents, all signed by Tom Kowalski, but the quantities received never matched the quantities invoiced. Page after page of discrepancies, carefully noted in Tom's precise handwriting. At the bottom, a sticky note. Praying for truth to come to light. T.A.K. I sat in my car, studying the evidence. Carl had stolen more than money. He'd stolen trust, perverted faith, turned a sacred space into his personal ATM, and he'd done it while preaching about righteousness, while standing behind the very pulpit his theft would eventually destroy. My phone rang. Mom? Lila, Honey, Carl's very upset. Maybe you should apologize. I can't do that, Mom. Silence, then, quietly. I know. Those 2 words carried years of weight. She knew. Maybe not the specifics, but she knew something was wrong, had always known. Be careful, she whispered, and hung up. I drove home with the envelope beside me. Another piece of ammunition in a war Carl didn't yet know he'd already lost. The committee meeting had shown his weakness. Pressure was making him sloppy, threatening people in front of witnesses, claiming authority he was starting to lose. Detective Hale called that evening. Good work today. Pastor Williams reached out to us independently. Seems he's been documenting concerns for months. Carl won't go down quietly. They never do, but he's isolated himself. The more he threatens people, the more they'll turn to us. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. I thought about Carl's words. Who would stand with me when this was over? He meant it as a threat, but I heard it as a promise. When this was over, I'd be standing with the truth. And he'd be standing in front of a judge. The announcement came on a Thursday. Halberd Dynamics issued a press release. $200,000 matching grant for St. Albans bell tower restoration, contingent upon transparent procurement and verified installations. The local paper ran it front page. Channel 7 did a feel-good segment about corporate community partnership. Carl called 17 times before noon. I answered the 18th. What the hell did you do? His voice was raw, dangerous. My job? Halberd approved the grant yesterday. Without consulting me? I'm the facilities chair. Which is why you'll oversee the bidding process, publicly, transparently. I'm sure Benton & Sons will submit a competitive proposal. Silence. Then, you're coming to dinner Sunday. We're discussing this as a family. I'll be at the church instead, for the grant announcement ceremony. What ceremony? The one Pastor Williams insisted on, after the service. He wants to thank Halberd publicly. Explain the new procurement process to the congregation. I paused. Local news will be there. The cursing that followed would have stripped paint. I held the phone away from my ear until he finished. You think you've won something, he finally said. You have no idea what you've started. He hung up. I immediately forwarded the call log to Detective Hale. The week passed in a blur of preparation. Maya Ruiz coordinated with church leadership, ensuring everything appeared routine. Detective Hale positioned his surveillance teams, 2 undercover officers posing as insurance assessors, cameras installed at key points around the church grounds, all perfectly legal for public spaces. We're adding audio, Hale told me Friday afternoon. The church's own system, Pastor Williams authorized recording the announcement for their archives. Everything said near a microphone will be captured. Carl will be careful. Desperate people are rarely careful, especially when they think they're still in control. Saturday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Sunday would bring, how Carl would react to being cornered in his own kingdom. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Denise. He knows something. Been in his office all night shredding papers. Please be careful tomorrow. I screenshot the message, sent it to Hale, then texted back. Stay away from the church tomorrow, please. Can't. He insists whole family attends. Says it's about unity. Unity, Carl's favorite weapon, turned against him. Sunday dawned crisp and bright. Autumn air sharp with possibility. I arrived early, found my seat in the middle section where the cameras would have clear sight lines. The church filled slowly. Regular congregants mixed with unusual faces I recognized as law enforcement despite their Sunday best. Carl entered with Denise and Noah, positioning his family in the front row like shields. He wore his best suit, the one reserved for Easter and board meetings, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes swept the room, cataloging threats. The service proceeded normally until Pastor Williams took the pulpit for announcements. Before we close, I want to share some wonderful news. Halberd Dynamics has blessed us with an extraordinary gift. He gestured to me. Lila Hart, would you join me? I walked to the front, feeling Carl's stare burning into my back. The congregation applauded politely. Local news cameras rolled. Halberd will match donations up to $200,000 for our bell tower restoration, I announced, reading from prepared notes. To ensure the best use of these funds, we'll be implementing a transparent bidding process. All contracts will require multiple signatures and progress verification. Amen to accountability, someone called out. Nervous laughter rippled through the pews. Pastor Williams took the microphone back. I want to personally thank our facilities committee, especially Carl Benton, for agreeing to oversee this transparent process. Carl stood slowly, his politician's smile not reaching his eyes. He walked to the front, each step measured. The air grew thick. I've always believed in taking care of God's house, Carl said, his voice carrying clearly through the sound system. And I'll continue to do so, regardless of new obstacles. Not obstacles, I corrected, still at the microphone. Safeguards. He turned to me, and for a moment, the mask slipped. Pure fury flashed across his face before he caught himself, remembering the cameras. Safeguards, he repeated. Of course, though I wonder what kind of stepdaughter needs safeguards from her own family. Gasps echoed through the sanctuary. Pastor Williams stepped forward, but I raised a hand. The kind who's seen $380,000 in previous donations result in $180,000 worth of actual work. The gasps turned to murmurs. Carl's face darkened. You want to do this here, in God's house? Where better to seek truth? Truth? His voice rose. The truth is you're a vindictive little... Carl, Pastor Williams' voice cut through. Perhaps we should continue this conversation privately. No. Carl stepped closer to me. The cameras tracked every movement. She wants transparency? Let's be transparent. Ask her why she's really doing this. Ask her about the family she's destroying over spreadsheets and grudges. I'm preserving a church, I said quietly, from those who would steal from it. The word steal hit like lightning. Congregation members shifted, whispered. Carl's hands clenched. Careful, he warned, lowering his voice, but the microphones caught every word. You have no idea what... Mr. Benton? Detective Hale stood from his pew, badge now visible. I think it's time we had that conversation. Carl froze. His eyes went to the exits, blocked, to the windows. More officers visible outside. To his family. Denise had her face buried in her hands. Noah staring in confusion. What is this? The safeguards, I said, stepping back as uniformed officers entered through the side doors. And the truth you were so eager to discuss. The next moments blurred. Miranda rights, handcuffs, cameras capturing everything as Carl Benton was arrested on the church steps he'd climbed for 20 years. The congregation spilled outside, witnessing the fall of their facilities committee vice chair. As they led him past me, Carl stopped. You'll regret this, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. When your mother... My mother is finally free, I cut him off. And so is this church. They put him in the squad car as Detective Hale explained to the stunned congregation that more information would be forthcoming, that their tithes and offerings were safe now. That justice, though delayed, had arrived on this Sunday morning. I stood on those same steps where, in just a few hours, Carl would make his last desperate mistake. But for now, the trap was sprung, the cameras were rolling, and the truth was finally coming into the light. The bail hearing was set for Monday morning. Carl posted bond by noon, $50,000 cash, courtesy of a second mortgage on the house my mother part-owned. He walked out of custody angrier than I'd ever seen him, according to Detective Hale's warning call. He's escalating, Hale told me. Made some threats and holding about dealing with loose ends. We've got surveillance on him, but be careful. I spent Monday at the office, trying to focus on legitimate charity work, while my phone buzzed with messages. Half the congregation supported the investigation. The other half blamed me for airing dirty laundry. Denise hadn't answered my calls. Tuesday brought the email from HR. Concerns have been raised about potential conflicts of interest in your position. Carl's network. Reaching into Halberd through golf buddies and church connections, I forwarded it to Maya Ruiz, who assured me whistleblower protections applied. By Wednesday, the pressure campaign intensified. Noah called, confused and hurting. "Why didn't you come to us first? Why did you have to humiliate him publicly?" I tried talking to him. "Noah, he threatened me. He's tough, but he's family. Now his business is ruined. My job," his voice cracked. "How am I supposed to learn the trade now?" "Learn it honestly, from someone who doesn't steal." He hung up on me. Thursday afternoon, Carl made his move. I was leaving Halberd when I spotted his truck in the parking lot. Instead of retreating inside, I walked directly to my car, phone already recording. "We need to talk," he said, stepping out of his vehicle. "My lawyer says otherwise." "Your lawyer," he laughed bitterly. "You know what I've lost this week? 3 contracts, 20 years of reputation. My brother won't return my calls." "Consequences." "Consequences." He moved closer, but I noted the security cameras overhead, the witnesses walking to their cars. "You want to talk about consequences? Your mother cries herself to sleep. Noah can't show his face at church. Margaret Hensley called me a thief to my face." "You are a thief." His face flushed. "I built that church, every renovation, every improvement, every inflated invoice, every phantom delivery." I pulled out my phone, showing him photos of Tom's inventory sheets. "We have everything. Carl, 3 years of fraud, documented and verified." Those documents were stolen. They were provided by a witness. Tom Kowalski will testify about every missing shipment, every forged signature. Tom's a bitter old man. Tom's an honest accountant who got tired of being gaslit. I started toward my car. "This conversation is over." "It's not over until I say it's over." He grabbed my arm, then immediately released it, remembering the cameras. But the contact was enough. Assault on tape. "Thank you for that," I said quietly. "You just violated your bail conditions." His face went white. "You set me up." I told the truth. "You're the one who can't stop threatening people." "Sunday," he said suddenly. "The Fall Harvest Festival. I'm still on the planning committee, still have my keys. Whole congregation will be there." "And?" "And you're going to stand up during the community meal and tell everyone this was a misunderstanding, that you were mistaken about the invoices, that Benton and Sons has always operated with integrity. Or I'll tell them about your breakdown junior year of college, about the counseling, the medication, how you've always been unstable, seeing conspiracies where there were none. Your mother kept those records. You know, I've seen them." My blood chilled, but I kept my voice steady. "Medical records from 15 years ago won't change financial fraud happening today." "Won't they? When the whole congregation hears how you've been fixated on me since you were a teenager? How you blamed me for your father leaving? How this is all just delayed teenage rebellion from a girl who never accepted her mother remarrying?" The manipulation was breathtaking. He'd taken my legitimate college stress, 1 bad semester, some counseling sessions, and weaponized it. "Try it," I said. "Stand up at that festival and tell those lies. Every word will be recorded, every threat documented." "It's not a threat. It's context. The congregation deserves to know their witness is unstable. The only instability they'll see is yours." I got in my car. "Stay away from me. Carl, stay away from the church, and definitely stay away from that festival." "You can't keep me from my own church." "The restraining order says otherwise." I held up the document Maya had rushed through that morning. "Emergency protective order. You can't come within 100 yards of me or the church grounds while the investigation is pending." His face contorted with rage. For a moment, I thought he might attack me right there in the parking lot. Cameras and witnesses be damned. Instead, he stepped back, that cold smile returning. "Sunday," he repeated. "Order or no order, that's my church, my community. You think a piece of paper will stop me from defending my name? I think violating a protective order will land you back in jail, this time without bail. We'll see." He stalked back to his truck, slamming the door hard enough to echo across the parking lot. I sat in my car, hands shaking, and called Detective Hale. He just threatened to show up Sunday despite the order. We'll be ready. Full uniformed presence at the festival. He shows up. He goes directly to jail. He's desperate. Good. Desperate people make fatal mistakes. Just stay vigilant until Sunday. Don't go anywhere alone. And Lila? You did good today. That recording will play well in court. I drove home, checking my mirrors. Knowing Sunday would bring the final confrontation. Carl had spent 20 years building his kingdom of lies. He wouldn't let it fall without a fight. But I had truth on my side, and an entire law enforcement team ready to ensure that when Carl made his last stand, it would indeed be his last. Sunday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made the St. Albans Fall Harvest Festival legendary. Pumpkins lined the church steps. Children's laughter echoed from the bounce house. The smell of apple cider drifted from the community hall. Everything appeared normal, except for the unusual number of people wearing earpieces and the insurance assessors stationed at every entrance. I arrived at noon. Detective Hale's team already in position. The restraining order was public knowledge now. Pastor Williams had reluctantly informed the festival committee that Carl Benton was legally barred from attending. He wouldn't dare show up, Margaret Hensley said, adjusting the craft booth she'd run for 15 years. Not with police everywhere. But I knew better. Carl's truck had been spotted circling the neighborhood all morning. He was out there, watching, waiting for his moment. The festival proceeded with forced normalcy. I helped serve cider. Conscious of the body camera disguised as a volunteer badge, Maya Ruiz mingled with congregants. Just another face in the crowd. Channel 7's news van sat innocuously in the parking lot, officially there to cover the community coming together after difficult revelations. At 2:47 p.m., Carl made his move. He didn't come through the main entrance where officers waited. Instead, he emerged from the old groundskeeper's shed, having used stolen keys to enter through the maintenance tunnel that connected to the church basement. 20 years of facilities management had given him knowledge of every hidden entrance. I was refilling the cider station when I heard the commotion. Carl strode across the lawn, his best suit replaced by work clothes, as if he'd just come from a job site, as if he belonged. "Afternoon, everyone," he called out, voice carrying that practiced authority. "Beautiful day for fellowship." The crowd froze. Parents pulled children closer. The bounce house deflated into silence. "Carl," Pastor Williams stepped forward, "you can't be here." "Can't be in my own church?" Carl's voice boomed across the lawn. "The church I built with these hands? The church I've served for 2 decades? I set down the cider ladle and walked forward, behind Carl. I could see officers converging, but slowly, trying to avoid panic. Detective Hale spoke quietly into his radio, likely calling for backup to cover the exit Carl had used. "There's a restraining order," I said clearly. "You're in violation." "There's the voice of family loyalty," Carl announced to the crowd. "My own stepdaughter, standing on the steps I renovated, under the roof I repaired, telling me I don't belong." He moved toward the steps, toward me. The crowd parted, some filming on their phones. The news camera swung our way. "I've got something to say," Carl continued, mounting the first step. "About truth, about family, about what really happened here." "Mr. Benton," Officer Martinez emerged from the crowd, hand on his radio. "You need to leave, now." "After I've had my say," Carl took another step up. "You all deserve to know who your real enemy is. This girl," he pointed at me, "has been planning this for years, ever since her daddy ran off and her mother found happiness with someone else." I stood my ground on the church landing. "The only plan was yours, Carl, planning to steal from people who trusted you." "Steal?" His face reddened. "I gave everything to this place. My sweat, my blood, my reputation. And took twice what you gave. We have the receipts." He lunged up the remaining steps faster than anyone expected. But 20 years of construction work had made him strong, not fast. I sidestepped. and his momentum carried him past me. He spun, raising his hand, and froze. Behind me stood not just Detective Hale and his team, but half the congregation, Tom Kowalski, Margaret Hensley, Richard Ames, the entire church board, Pastor Williams, all the people he'd intimidated, manipulated, and stolen from, all standing witness. "Go ahead," I said quietly, though the church's wireless mic system picked up every word. "Show them who you really are." Carl's hand trembled in the air. The news camera captured everything: his rage, his desperation, the moment he realized his kingdom had already fallen. Then he swung. The blow caught my cheek, snapping my head sideways. Pain bloomed across my face, but I didn't fall. I didn't even step back. I just turned to face him again, blood trickling from my split lip. "You didn't see who stood behind you," I said, echoing words from a future he'd now written himself. "You never do." He turned, finally seeing the wall of witnesses, the cameras, the officers with handcuffs already out. Maya Ruiz stepped forward with a tablet, displaying financial records on the screen. "Carl Benton, you're under arrest for felony fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and now assault." Detective Hale's voice carried across the silent festival. "You have the right to remain silent." "No!" Carl struggled as they cuffed him. "You don't understand. I built this place. These people owe me." "We owe you nothing," Pastor Williams said firmly, "except justice." As they led Carl away, he twisted to glare at me one last time. "This isn't over." "Yes," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It is." The squad car door slammed. As it pulled away, I heard the church bells ring, not the automated Sunday morning recording, but Tom Kowalski in the tower, pulling the ropes by hand, a funeral toll for Carl's empire of lies. Margaret Hensley offered me a tissue for my lip. That was brave, dear. That was necessary. The crowd began to disperse, some returning to the festival, others gathering in small groups to process what they'd witnessed. Channel 7's reporter approached for a statement, but I waved her toward Pastor Williams. This was the church's story to tell now. My phone buzzed. A text from Denise. I saw, "I'm proud of you. Come home when you're ready. We have so much to talk about." Noah appeared at my elbow, his face pale and conflicted. "Is it true? All of it?" "Every word. I'm sorry. Noah, I know this is hard." He nodded slowly. Maybe I can learn the trade from someone else, the right way." "I'd like that." As the festival slowly returned to life around us, I touched my swollen lip and looked up at the bell tower Carl would never finish renovating. The copper could wait for an honest contractor. The congregation could heal with transparent leadership. And I could finally stop looking over my shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It had dropped, on Carl's own head, in front of God and everyone. Justice served on the church steps. There was poetry in that. The courthouse steps were slick with morning dew as Carl was led up them in handcuffs. 6 weeks after the festival, the trial had been swift. Overwhelming evidence tends to have that effect. I sat in the gallery between my mother and Noah, watching the man who'd terrorized our family face the consequences of his choices. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Morrison asked. "We have, Your Honor. Guilty, 15 counts of fraud. Guilty, money laundering. Guilty, assault." The words fell like hammers, each one driving Carl deeper into his seat. His lawyer, paid for by mortgaging equipment from his dying business, had tried to argue mental distress, family persecution, even religious discrimination. None of it stuck, not against bank records, forged signatures, and video evidence of him attacking me on church property. "Carl Benton," Judge Morrison's voice filled the courtroom. "You violated the sacred trust of a religious community. You stole from people who believed in you, who trusted you with their tithes and offerings. You perverted faith for profit." Carl stood for sentencing, his orange jumpsuit a far cry from his Sunday suits. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked small. 8 to 12 years in state prison, full restitution of $212,000 to St. Albans Community Chapel. Forfeiture of all assets obtained through fraudulent means. The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and questions. Maya Ruiz handled most of them, explaining how the case would serve as a model for prosecuting religious financial fraud. I stood with my family, feeling the weight of the last 6 weeks finally lifting. "Lila," a familiar voice called. Tom Kowalski approached, carrying a banker's box. "These are the real inventory records. Thought the church might want them back." "Tom, I'm sorry you got pulled into this." He smiled. "I've been praying for truth to come to light for 3 years. You were the answer to those prayers." Behind him, Margaret Hensley and other congregation members gathered. Not the whole church. Carl had his supporters still, people who'd benefited from his contracts or believed his lies, but enough to show that St. Albans would survive this scandal. "The board voted last night," Pastor Williams announced. "We're implementing all of Halberd's transparency requirements. Every dollar, every contract, every decision, open books from now on." "And the bell tower?" I asked. 3 competitive bids, just like you required," he smiled. "Turns out honest contractors charge about half what Carl did. We'll have enough left over to fix the foundation properly." Detective Hale shook my hand before leaving. "You did good, Ms. Hart. Not many people have the courage to stand up to family." "It wasn't courage," I said. "It was necessity." As the crowd dispersed, Denise linked her arm through mine. "Ready to go home?" "Almost." I walked to the corner where Carl had been led to the prison transport van. He was gone now, beginning his 8-year minimum sentence, but his shadow still lingered over the church, over our family, over this community he'd poisoned with greed. "He'll be eligible for parole in 5 years," Noah said quietly, "with good behavior. Then we have 5 years to rebuild without him," I replied, to show that honesty works better than his way. Noah nodded. At 19, he was old enough to choose his own path. He'd started apprenticing with Morrison Construction, a firm known for quality work and fair pricing. Carl's legacy would end with him. "I need to stop by the office," I told them. "One last thing to file." At Halberd Dynamics, I submitted my final report on the St. Albans investigation. Attached was a new proposal, a comprehensive audit program for all religious organizations receiving corporate funds, the Heart Protocol, they were calling it. Carl's theft had led to reform that would protect other churches from similar predators. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that I recognized as one of Carl's prison communication services. "This isn't over." I deleted it without responding. It was over. The money had been frozen. The assets liquidated. Benton & Sons Construction was defunct. The house would be sold to pay restitution. Carl's reputation, his business, his freedom, all gone. Most importantly, the truth was public record. No more secrets, no more intimidation, no more using God's name to cover theft. The congregation knew exactly who Carl Benton was, and that knowledge was its own life sentence. I drove home past St. Albans, where volunteers were hanging a new sign. Fall Festival Fundraiser, transparent books, honest building, faithful service. The bells rang the hour, clear and true. Tom must have fixed the mechanism Carl had claimed needed $15,000 in repairs. Turned out it just needed honest hands and a clear conscience. My lip had healed, leaving only the faintest scar, a reminder that sometimes drawing blood is the price of drawing truth into light. But as I watched children playing on the church lawn, free from the shadow of corruption, I knew it had been worth every drop. Carl thought family meant silence. He thought faith meant blind trust. He thought power meant never being questioned. He thought wrong. And now, from a cell in state prison, he had 8 to 12 years to think about why. The last time I saw those church steps, they were clean. No blood, no lies, no shadows. Just stone and mortar, built by honest hands. The way it always should have been. Thank you for listening to this story of truth triumphing over corruption. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Lila's situation? Your perspectives make our community richer.